Hello, friends. Today, we will descend into places that ordinary people strive not even to glance at. We live under the illusion of total control. Satellites, iPhones, global positioning. We believe the world is mapped, digitized, and tucked away in a convenient app. But step out into the open ocean and cross the invisible threshold of one of the 10 anomalous zones, and all that digital armor crumbles like dry rot. Compasses go mad. The radio spectrum fills with a dead silence, and your modern liner becomes a tin can in the face of forces that care nothing for progress. Today, we will traverse the triangles of death, from the Bermuda region to the Japanese Devil's Sea. No cheap mysticism or tales of aliens here, only hard physics, infrasound, methane emissions, and the human factor. Our investigation begins now. Fasten your seatbelts. We are plunging into depths from which not everyone returns. Triangle number 1. The Bermuda Shroud. The veil over the Sargasso Sea. Our coordinates are located in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean, between the tip of Florida, the Bermuda Islands Group, and Puerto Rico. This expanse of water, covering more than 1 million square kilometers, has had a sinister reputation for centuries. Here, the Sargasso Sea, the only sea in the world without shores, defined solely by currents, meets the powerful pulse of the Gulf Stream. Geographically, this area features an extremely complex terrain, ranging from shallow coral banks to the abyssal trench of Puerto Rico, whose depth exceeds 8,400 meters. Two elements converge here: the heated waters of the tropics and cold atmospheric fronts that generate sudden, devastating storms. The surface of the water here is often deceptive. It can appear mirror smooth, yet beneath this glaze lie currents reaching speeds of 5 to 6 knots. This is a giant river within the ocean, capable of carrying shipwreck debris hundreds of miles in just a few hours. What causes modern ocean liners and propeller aircraft to vanish without a trace without even having time to send a distress signal? I have thousands of pages of reports at my disposal, and I identify several fundamental physical causes that science contrasts with myths. First, there is the phenomenon of white waters. Huge accumulations of methane hydrates lie beneath thick layers of bottom sediments on the slopes of the continental shelf. During seismic shifts or the slightest tectonic vibrations, methane is released. A huge gas bubble rising to the surface turns water into boiling foam with a density much lower than calculated. A ship caught above such a release instantly loses buoyancy and plunges into the abyss, as if into an air pocket. The echo sounder manages to register a void beneath the keel, and that is the last thing the watch officer sees. Second, there are magnetic declinations. In this sector of the Atlantic, the compass needle points not to magnetic north, but to true north. For an inexperienced navigator or pilot in conditions of poor visibility, an error of 5 to 10 degrees can prove fatal, driving a vessel far out into the open ocean and away from coastal landmarks. Thirdly, infrasound. Low-frequency vibrations generated by the friction of strong winds against the surface of ocean waves during a storm can reach a frequency of 6 to 7 Hz. This sound, inaudible to the human ear, impacts both the psyche and internal organs. It triggers panic-stricken terror, hallucinations, and a sense of imminent doom. I attribute the phenomena of ghost ships, found in perfect condition but without a single living soul aboard, to this very cause. Sailors, seized by inexplicable madness, would simply throw themselves into the water, desperate to escape an unseen enemy. On the 5th of December, 1945, 5 Avenger torpedo bombers under the command of Lieutenant Charles Taylor took off from the Fort Lauderdale base to carry out training mission number 19. These were experienced pilots flying serviceable aircraft with full fuel tanks. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the base's radio frequency erupted with distress messages. Taylor reported a complete loss of bearing. "We cannot see the Earth. Everything appears abnormal. Even the ocean seems unusual." His voice trembled, an uncharacteristic reaction for a combat veteran. The instruments on all 5 aircraft malfunctioned simultaneously. Compass needles spun uncontrollably. Picture that moment: 5 metal birds in a gray gloom, where the sky blends into the sea. Beneath them, pilots saw only white water, a dense fog that stole their sense of space. The final words picked up by shore stations were filled with desperation. "Do not follow us." They look like the transmission cut off with a crackle of interference. To locate the missing squadron, a rescue seaplane, the Martin Mariner, with a crew of 13, was dispatched. Within 20 minutes, it too vanished from the radar screens. Over an expanse of hundreds of thousands of square miles, not a single oil stain, piece of wreckage, or life vest was ever recovered. Another tragedy was the disappearance of the collier Cyclops in March of 1918. An enormous vessel with a displacement of 19,000 tons, carrying 300 passengers on board. It simply vanished into thin air between Barbados and Norfolk. In its final radio transmission, the captain tersely reported, "Weather is fine, everything is in order." Yet the Cyclops never entered port. Researchers at my level know that such ships do not sink instantly, unless the ocean itself opens up the abyss beneath. A metal hull 154 meters in length should have left at least a trail of debris, but the void swallowed it whole, as if snapping shut a chest's lid. While working with archives and gazing into the blue emptiness through the porthole of a bathyscaphe, I often think of human hubris. We have built gigantic aircraft carriers, equipped them with satellite navigation and radars capable of spotting a bird from 100 miles away. But in the Bermuda Triangle, all that metal turns into a heap of dead scrap. The ocean is an ancient organism with its own memory and rhythm. We are merely visitors on its surface. When we encounter anomalies, we are not facing magic but rather physics that we have yet to learn how to predict. This serves as a reminder that 3/4 of our planet remain as enigmatic to us as the far side of the moon. Here, at a depth of 5,000 meters, eternal darkness reigns, along with pressures of hundreds of atmospheres and absolute cold. This realm is not meant for humankind. The Bermuda Shroud is only the first page of our grim catalog. The ocean is vast, and its appetite is limitless. Our course lies eastward toward the shores of Japan. There, in the waters of the Pacific Ocean, stretches a place that Japanese fishermen have called Manaumi for centuries. We are heading to the Devil's Sea, where not only fishing schooners vanish, but entire scientific research expeditions as well. From its depths rise pillars of fire that make the blood boil in the veins of even the bravest sailors. Prepare yourselves. Ahead lies an even thicker fog, and still deeper troughs on the echo sounder. Triangle number 2, the Devil's Sea, the Pacific's ashen graveyard. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle. This expanse of water has its theoretical apex connecting Japan, the northern Philippines, and the island of Guam. Unlike the Bermuda Triangle, the forces of nature here are not just unpredictable, they are openly hostile. Beneath our vessel's keel currently sits the Izu-Bonin Trench, a deep gash in the Earth's crust plunging to 9,810 meters. This area is defined by tremendous seismic activity. We are located in the very core of the Ring of Fire. Here, the ocean floor is not a stationary plane, but a constantly morphing terrain of erupting volcanoes, islands that rise and disappear, and tectonic fractures. The weather shifts as swiftly as a seagull's wing beat. A dead calm transforms into a typhoon within just minutes. Water often acquires a strange, lead-gray hue, while thick vapor rises above the waves, smelling of sulfur and burnt rubber. The primary cause of shipwrecks in the Devil's Sea lies not in the skies, but in the very underworld beneath the ocean floor. The main adversary for sailors here is submarine volcanism. Imagine the steel hull of a cargo vessel moving across calm water. Deep beneath it, a volcano awakens. Huge volumes of superheated gas and ash are ejected into the water column. The density of the ocean instantly drops to critical levels. The ship, deprived of the support that salt water provides, literally plunges into the gaping cavity that opens below it. But this is only part of the horror. When magma contacts the frigid bottom water, explosions of colossal force occur. The shockwave passes through the ship's hull like a knife through butter, tearing welded seams apart and distorting bulkheads. Due to the high gas content in the water, the vessel's engines begin to choke. The cooling system becomes clogged with pumice and ash, while the propellers cavitate in the gas mixture, generating no thrust. The vessel turns into a dead hunk of metal, drifting straight toward the eruption's epicenter. Magnetic anomalies here also assume extreme forms. In the vicinity of the Myogen and Smith Islands, compass needles can deviate by 30 degrees or more. This is due to deposits of magnetic ores in the basalt rocks and the powerful electrical currents generated by the friction of ash masses in the atmosphere during eruptions. Radio communication becomes useless at such moments. The airwaves are filled with white noise, interrupted by the crackle of static discharges, which sailors of old mistook for the laughter of demons. The history of the Devil's Sea is written in blood and ash. As early as the 10th century, the great Khan Kublai twice attempted to conquer Japan, sending enormous fleets toward its shores. Tens of thousands of warriors and hundreds of ships were swallowed by sudden typhoons, which the Japanese called kamikaze, the divine wind. But those who survived told of how the sea literally boiled and fiery dragons rose from the depths. Let us move ahead to the 20th century. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 large fishing vessels vanished without a trace in this zone. All of them were equipped with radio stations that were state-of-the-art at the time, yet none managed to send out an SOS signal. The Japanese government, troubled by the scale of the tragedy, officially declared the Devil's Sea a dangerous area. In September 1952, a research vessel named Kaio Maru No. 5 was dispatched to investigate the causes of the anomaly. On board were 31 people, including top oceanographers, hydrographers, and sailors. They were heading towards a newly formed volcanic island in the Myogen reef chain. The last entry in the log was made on September 24th. The researchers reported unusual water color and intense vibrations in the hull. After that, communication was lost. A search operation involving dozens of aircraft and boats found nothing but a few fragments of a lifeboat and pieces of deck bearing signs of thermal damage. An examination revealed that the vessel was destroyed by a sudden, upward-directed burst of gases, followed by a wave caused by the collapse of an underwater crater. The Kaio Maru did not simply sink, it was literally crushed by the energy of the Earth. I personally studied the sonar images of that area. At a depth of 500 meters, we saw the hulls of ships frozen in bizarre poses, half buried in volcanic ash. They look like the victims of Pompeii, but frozen not in stone, but in the eternal cold and darkness of the abyss. The oxidized metal of their instruments and the rusted skeletons of their masts stand as monuments to human helplessness in the face of planetary fury. The Devil's Sea teaches us that the ocean is not just water. It is the dynamic, living skin of the Earth, which breathes constantly. We are accustomed to thinking of the seafloor as a solid foundation, the bedrock of our world, but here it transforms into shifting sand, a snare ready to spring shut at any instant. When you stand on the deck at these coordinates, you feel the planks vibrating beneath your feet. This is not the rumble of diesel engines. It is the planet itself trembling. Hallucinations triggered by infrasonic waves from underwater tremors make people perceive ghostly lights and hear voices in the wind. Here, the boundary between a physical phenomenon and a primal nightmare dissolves. We researchers refer to this as sensory resonance, but to an ordinary sailor, it is the breath of a dragon dwelling in the abyss. Our exploration has only just begun. We depart from the turbulent shores of Japan and journey southward, crossing the equator. What awaits us is a region where anomalies assume a different shape. Not volcanic, but electromagnetic and spatial. Ahead lies the South Atlantic anomaly, the Bermuda Triangle of space, where electronics malfunction not because of gas, but due to Earth's radiation belts dipping too low, where satellites lose their vision and sailors witness auroras over tropical waters. We continue our chronicles of the consuming depths. Triangle number 3, the South Atlantic abyss. The shadow of the radiation belt, the South Atlantic anomaly, or as oceanographers and geophysicists call it, the Bermuda Triangle of the skies, extends from the eastern shore of Brazil to the southernmost point of Africa. The coordinates of this region encompass the area between 30 degrees south latitude and 40 degrees west longitude, gradually moving westward as a result of magnetic pole drift. This is the location where Earth's inner radiation belt, the Van Allen belt, descends to its lowest altitude. While in other parts of the planet it is located many thousands of kilometers away, Here, high-energy particles bombard the space just 200 kilometers above sea level, and their influence is felt even on the water's surface. For a sailor, this means being inside an invisible energy well. Here, the ocean meets harsh cosmic radiation, creating a unique environment where not only technology fails, but also human perception. The essence of this anomaly lies in a catastrophic weakening of Earth's magnetic field. In this sector, it is 30 to 40% weaker than at any other point on the planet. This creates a hole in our natural defense. When the solar wind, a stream of protons and electrons, strikes this gap, physical phenomena occur that cannot be explained by classical navigation. Electronics here behave like a living creature seized by agony. Phantom targets appear on radar screens, entire fleets of ghost ships that are not on the horizon. Global positioning systems generate errors spanning hundreds of miles, causing a vessel's automatic controls to execute sudden, unjustified maneuvers. Inside the bridge cabin, the air often carries the scent of ozone, a sharp, metallic smell reminiscent of an approaching thunderstorm, even when the sky remains entirely cloudless. But the most terrifying phenomenon is its effect on the human eye. Sailors who found themselves in this zone during moments of solar flares reported phosphorescent flashes occurring directly within their eyeballs. High-energy particles pierce the retina, leaving behind white branching traces. During a nighttime assault, when the deck is drenched with gray steel water and total darkness envelops everything, these visual hallucinations strip watch officers of their remaining sanity. Infrasound vibrations, generated by the interaction between the ionosphere and ocean currents, create a resonance in the chest cavity, producing the sensation that the heart itself is beating in time with a sinking ship. On November 15, 2017, the Argentine Navy's diesel-electric submarine San Juan, carrying 44 crew members, was transiting through the area of the South Atlantic anomaly. This was a modern vessel, recently refitted, with an experienced captain and a well-trained crew. At 7:30 in the morning local time, the submarine made its last communication. The captain reported a short circuit in the battery compartment, caused by water entering through the snorkel. However, this was considered a standard situation that the crew should have been able to handle. Several hours later, an abnormal, single, brief, and powerful sound signal of non-nuclear origin was detected at that location in the ocean. When search teams, including experts from 15 countries, arrived in the area of the disappearance, they encountered unexplained phenomena. Search instruments, magnetometers, and echo sounders produced chaotic readings. Hydrophones picked up strange noises resembling the scraping of metal. And giant stones, despite there being over 1,000 meters of depth beneath the keel. The wreck of San Juan was only discovered a year later, at a depth of 907 meters. The boat's hull was not merely crushed by pressure, it was torn apart, as if subjected to a colossal centrifugal force. The internal instruments had melted, even though no traces of fire were found. This is a classic signature of the South Atlantic anomaly, a combination of a technical failure and a physical phenomenon that turns a steel capsule into an iron coffin. Another case involved the freighter Munich in December of 1978. This massive vessel, 261 meters in length and considered unsinkable, vanished in the region after transmitting only fragments of messages about unbelievable interference on the airwaves and lights on the water. The sole piece of debris found was a lifeboat, secured at a height of 20 meters above the waterline. It had been ripped from its powerful steel fastenings with such force that bolts of 5 centimeters in diameter were twisted into spirals. Studies have indicated that the vessel may have encountered a rogue wave whose height, under the influence of a magnetic anomaly and a specific current, reached 30 meters. An enormous wall of water, materializing out of nowhere while the radars remained dead silent, simply crushed the Munich within 40 seconds. In the South Atlantic, we come to realize just how fragile our technological armor truly is. We have grown accustomed to trusting satellites orbiting in the void, but here that connection breaks. When instruments begin to deceive, the sailor is left alone with the primal ocean. Here, in the shadow of the radiation belt, we witness the underside of the world. The ocean acts as a giant lens, focusing cosmic energy. This place reminds us, humans are merely a biological species, whose brains operate on weak electrical impulses. When those impulses collide with the fury of a magnetic storm, reality starts to fracture. The oxidized copper of the instruments and all the other waves become the last things recorded by the fading consciousness of those who dared to challenge this zone. We are not merely researchers. We are chroniclers of human helplessness in the face of cosmic laws we are only beginning to comprehend. We leave the South Atlantic with its invisible rays of death and set a course northward toward the shores of North America. Yet we will not return to saltwater. A different freshwater nightmare awaits us, no less horrifying. Our journey takes us into the heart of the continent, to the Great Lakes. There, amidst the icy waters and dense fogs of Lake Michigan, lies a triangle that has claimed the lives of thousands of sailors and pilots. Where the lakebed is littered with wreckage from 19th-century schooners and 20th-century aircraft, we seek an answer to the question, can the Earth itself consume those who disturb its peace? Triangle number 4. The Michigan Ice Cage, the nightmare of the Midwest. The Michigan Triangle is situated in the northern part of the lake bearing the same name. Its vertices are conventionally drawn through the cities of Ludington, Benton Harbor, and Manitowoc. Lake Michigan is a colossal reservoir stretching more than 500 kilometers in length. Its depths reach 281 meters, and the ever-changing topography of the bottom conceals canyons and underwater ridges comparable to mountain ranges. A unique microclimate prevails here. Sharp temperature contrasts between the warmed land and the icy mass of water generate sudden, thick fogs that sailors call the White Death. At such moments, visibility drops to zero, and sound is muted, absorbed by the dense suspension of moisture. In winter, the lake is locked in ice, turning navigation into a battle against the elements, and storms here are shorter but more furious than those on the ocean. Due to the limited expanse, the waves are steep, short, and strike the hull with the frequency of a jackhammer. The Michigan Triangle is not only a meteorological trap, but also a site of unexplained electromagnetic disturbances. Researchers conducting sonar mapping of the bottom here in 2007 discovered at a depth of 12 meters a strange structure made of massive stones, reminiscent of Stonehenge. On one of the boulders, a clear image of a mastodon was found, carved thousands of years ago. The mere presence of such an object indicates that the lakebed was once dry land that experienced a catastrophic flood. The physics of the anomaly here is closely connected to the phenomenon of seiches, standing waves that form in enclosed basins due to atmospheric pressure and wind. A seiche can raise the water level by several meters within a matter of minutes, and then, just as suddenly, drop it. A vessel at anchor or navigating through a narrow strait may be instantly thrown onto reefs or crushed against a dock. Magnetic deviations in the Ludington area have been recorded for decades. Compass needles there begin to tremble as if in a fever. Meanwhile, modern digital instruments produce errors when determining altitude and coordinates. We believe this is linked to deposits of iron ore and powerful tectonic faults lying beneath the lakebed. It is precisely these faults that generate infrasound, which, in the enclosed space of the lake, becomes amplified, triggering in the crew a sense of impending doom and auditory hallucinations. On the 28th of April, 1937, the freighter O. McFarland was crossing Lake Michigan with a cargo of coal. Captain George Donner, a seasoned sailor, retired to his cabin after a demanding watch, asking his mate to wake him when the vessel neared the port of Ludington. 3 hours later, the mate knocked on the door. There was no response. The door was bolted from the inside. Alarmed, the sailors forced it open and stood frozen in shock. The cabin was empty. The window was too narrow for an adult to squeeze through, and the bolt on the door ruled out the possibility that the captain had exited that way. George Donner had vanished from a ship steaming at full speed, leaving behind no note and no signs of a struggle. A search of the icy waters yielded nothing. Oceanographic analysis later indicated that at that moment, the vessel was located exactly in the center of an anomalous zone. Where did the man vanish from the sealed steel box? A question for which science has no answer. Another tragedy unfolded on the 23rd of June, 1950. An aircraft belonging to Northwest Orient Airlines, flight number 250, carrying 58 people on board, was flying over Lake Michigan. A fierce thunderstorm raged in the sky. Pilot Robert Lind requested permission to descend due to severe turbulence. That was the last communication. The plane instantly disappeared from radar screens. Rescue operations began immediately, but the lake refused to give up its prize. Only small fragments of the fuselage and an oil slick were found. Despite the fact that the depth at that location did not exceed 50 meters, the main wreckage of the fuselage and the bodies of the passengers were never discovered. Decades later, divers and sonar continue to scour the lake bed, but Flight 250 seems to have fallen into another dimension. Local residents that night reported strange lights pulsating above the water and sounds resembling the tearing of metal, which came from the emptiness of the fog. The Michigan Triangle proves to us that fresh water conceals horrors no less terrifying than those of the salty ocean. We often consider lakes to be safe, almost domestic bodies of water, but this is an illusion. Here, in the heart of the continent, the sense of isolation feels even sharper. When your vessel is engulfed by the white death of Michigan fog, you realize that the shore may be mere miles away, yet those miles transform into an insurmountable wall. The oxidized copper of the instruments in the captain's cabin, the icy spray freezing on the lifelines, and the silence of the echo sounder above the crash site of Flight 250, all these are facets of a single mystery. The lake is a cold, dark memory of the Earth. It guards its secrets in viscous silt, where water pressure and the absence of light preserve the wreckage of the past. We are merely transient shadows upon its surface. We leave the frozen embrace of Michigan behind and return to the great ocean roots. Our course lies northwest, toward the rugged shores of Alaska. There, in the realm of permafrost and giant glaciers, lies an area known as the Alaska Triangle. Here, people vanish not only from ship decks, but also straight from the Earth's surface. And the mountains seem to possess a sinister will of their own. We will trade the salty wind for the frosty breath of the tundra, and continue our search for truth in places where reality itself becomes as fragile as the first ice. Triangle number 5. Alaskan Captivity, the icy graveyard of the North. The Alaska Triangle spans a colossal territory between the cities of Anchorage in the south, Juneau in the southeast, and Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow, on the northern coast, far beyond the Arctic Circle. It covers hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of wild, impassable tundra, dense coniferous forests, and rocky peaks stretching into the heavy gray sky. Weather conditions here are a daily challenge to human existence. The temperature can drop by 20 to 30 degrees Celsius in just a few hours, while hurricane-force winds known as velavao rush down from glaciers and strike coastal areas at speeds exceeding 150 kilometers per hour. The sea here smells of snow and ancient ice, and the tidal currents in Cook Inlet are considered among the most powerful and dangerous on the planet. The depths of the coastal waters conceal treacherous reefs and underwater rocks that have not yet been mapped with sufficient accuracy. Why does the Alaska Triangle claim so many lives? The statistics are alarming. Since the early 1970s, more than 20,000 people have vanished without a trace in this region. These are not merely random disappearances. They involve entire groups of people, crews of aircraft and ships, leaving behind not even an oil slick on the water or a piece of landing gear. The scientific explanation lies in the concept of destructive vortices. Alaska is located in a zone of extreme geomagnetic activity. Here, Earth's magnetic field lines do not merely intersect, they twist into knots under the influence of powerful streams of charged particles from space and tectonic faults. The magnetometers aboard our vessel often behave erratically in this area. The instrument's needle does not simply deviate, it begins to vibrate at a high frequency, indicating intense local disturbances. These magnetic anomalies directly affect the human brain, particularly the temporal lobes. Studies show that in such zones, people may experience disorientation, deep depression, or conversely, causeless euphoria, as well as vivid audio-visual hallucinations. An aircraft pilot or the captain of a seiner, in conditions of whiteout, when sky and earth merge into a uniform white space, loses their sense of the horizon. Due to magnetic interference, the instruments indicate a gain in altitude, while the machine hurtles at full speed toward the glacier's surface. Additionally, vast moving ice sheets generate infrasound, low-frequency vibrations inaudible to the human ear, but capable of resonating with internal organs and triggering a primal, paralyzing fear. An individual in this state is prone to irrational actions, such as abandoning a warm sanctuary and venturing into a blizzard to flee an imagined threat. On the 16th of October, 1972, a date that entered aviation history as one of the North's most perplexing mysteries, a twin-engine Cessna 310 departed from Anchorage bound for Juneau. On board were 4 individuals, 2 influential politicians, U.S. Representative Hale Boggs and Nick Begich, along with their aide Russell Brown and pilot Edmund Johnson. The aircraft was equipped with the cutting-edge technology of its era and was piloted by an ASO. The flight path followed the coastline, which featured numerous emergency landing strips, yet the Cessna never reached its destination. It simply vanished into thin air. The search operation became the most extensive in the history of the United States. 74 aircraft, including both military and civilian types, 40 coastal boats, and thousands of volunteers combed every square meter along the route for 39 days. They discovered nothing. Not a single emergency beacon signal, not a single piece of fuselage, not a single spot of gasoline on the surface of the bays. It was as if the aircraft had been erased from the face of the earth by a giant eraser. Researchers at my level understand that under Alaskan conditions, a craft can be instantly buried under freshly fallen snow or pulled into a glacier crevasse that closes within hours due to the movement of ice masses. However, the loss of radio signal during flight indicates a sudden catastrophic failure of electronics caused by an electromagnetic pulse. Another incident occurred with a small fishing vessel, the Arctic Star, in June 1990. The vessel was in the calm waters of the Gulf of Alaska. At 12 o'clock noon, the captain reported via radio that they were observing a strange glow beneath the water, resembling a swarm of bioluminescent jellyfish, but as large as a whale. 5 minutes later, the vessel stopped responding to calls. A Coast Guard helicopter that arrived at the scene 2 hours later found the Arctic Star drifting with the current. The engine was idling. In the galley, a kettle was boiling on the stove. On deck, untouched nets full of catch lay scattered, yet not a single one of the 5 crew members was on board. No signs of struggle or panic were discovered. The people had seemingly vanished into thin air, leaving their lives on pause. My analysis of this area points to a potential sudden methane release from bottom sediments, which could have caused an instant loss of consciousness among the crew, after which they were swept overboard by a sudden killer wave generated by the collapse of a portion of an underwater glacier. The Alaska Triangle serves as a reminder that there are still places on the planet where humans are not in control. Here we encounter the power of the elements, operating on the scale of dialogic epics. The oceans and mountains here carry on an eternal conversation, into which we insert ourselves with our fragile machines and ambitions. The oxidized copper of instruments found among the wreckage of other, less fortunate disappearances, the cold gleam of icy water, and the whistle of the wind, reminiscent of weeping. These are the attributes of this zone. We can build digital models and launch satellites, but when you stand on the deck in the fog off the coast of Alaska, you realize that your life hangs on a thin thread of communication that can snap at any second at the whim of an invisible magnetic vortex. Here, the abyss does not merely gaze back at you, it breathes into your face with an icy chill. We leave the harsh northern latitudes and make a long journey southward into the warm, yet no less dangerous waters of the Indian Ocean. Our course lies towards the shores of Madagascar and the Mozambique Channel. There, in a region notorious for unexplained disappearances of tankers and mysterious white circles on the water, we are exploring the South African Triangle. Where 2 great oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian, collide, waves as tall as a 10-story building are born, and compasses begin to spin counterclockwise. Prepare for the heat, the scent of spices and salt, and a new encounter with the unknown. We are leaving the icy fjords of Alaska behind and making a massive crossing across the entire expanse of the Pacific Ocean, passing the equator to round Cape Horn and enter the harsh waters of the South Atlantic, which gradually merge into the Indian Ocean. Our vessel, the Kronos, is now moving along the southeastern coast of Africa. Here, in the area of Cape Agulhas and the coast of KwaZulu-Natal, lies a zone that sailors from the Age of Sail called the Ship Graveyard, or the Skeleton Coast, although officially we refer to it as the Agulhas Triangle. Triangle number 6, the Agulhas Abyss, a place where worlds collide. The Needle Triangle, also known as the Agulhas Current Anomaly, encompasses the maritime expanse stretching between the ports of Durban, East London, and the southernmost point of the African continent. Geographically, it ranks among the most inhospitable zones in the world's oceans. Here, two immense water systems converge. The warm and extraordinarily swift Agulhas Current, flowing from the Indian Ocean, meets the cold west wind drift originating from Antarctica. In this region, current speeds can reach 5 to 6 knots, effectively transforming the ocean into a colossal moving river. Depths vary considerably, ranging from a shallow continental shelf down to 4,000 meters in the Agulhas Basin. Weather in this area is a state of perpetual chaos. Sudden storms sweeping in from the Southern Ocean collide with the warm air mass above the current, generating swells that mariners describe as a raging sea. The air is perpetually saturated with heavy, sticky salt, and the sky often takes on an ominous copper hue due to dust carried by winds from the Kalahari and Namib deserts. The main mystery and the greatest horror of the Needle Triangle are killer waves, or rogue waves. For a long time, science dismissed them as the fantasies of drunken sailors, but modern research has confirmed that these waves are born here more frequently than anywhere else on the planet. Their formation mechanism in this region is unique. When the powerful Agulhas Current, flowing southwestward, meets the giant storm waves advancing from Antarctica toward the northeast, a physical superposition effect occurs. The energy of the current literally compresses the waves, making them shorter but incredibly tall and steep. As a result, a single wave emerges, reaching a height of 25 to 30 or even 40 meters. It is a vertical wall, before which a deep trough, a hole in the ocean, opens up. A ship, even the most modern supertanker 300 meters in length, when caught in such a trough, does not have time to lift its bow. 40,000 tons of water crash onto the deck with a force comparable to that of a hammer striking an anvil. Metal decks bend like paper. The portholes on the bridge, located at the height of a 10-story building, are blown inward along with their frames. The vessel can be snapped in half within a single second. Moreover, strange acoustic anomalies are recorded here. Due to the difference in temperature and water density between two currents, a liquid mirror is created that reflects sonar signals, producing the illusion of shallow waters where there are kilometers of depth beneath the keel. Radio communication during the passage of cold fronts is often jammed by an infrasonic hum that induces physical nausea and loss of spatial orientation in sailors. The loudest and most tragic disappearance in this zone was the loss of the British liner Waratah in July 1909. The Waratah was the pride of the British fleet. She was called the Titanic of the Southern Seas. The vessel, with a displacement of more than 9,000 tons, was carrying 211 passengers and crew members. On the 26th of July, the liner departed from Durban to Cape Town. The weather began to deteriorate. The other vessel, the Clan McIntyre, sighted the Waratah the following morning. The captains exchanged signals, and the liner, which possessed greater speed, began to navigate through the thickening fog and stormy haze. That was the last time any human eye laid sight on that ship. The Waratah did not send out an SOS signal. It simply vanished. Over several months, the British Admiralty and private companies scoured every inch of the coastline. Not a single lifeboat was found, not a single body, not a single lifebuoy bearing the inscription Verota. In 1977, sonar equipment detected a large object on the seabed in that area, but a dive revealed it to be a vessel from the Second World War. The Verota remains a phantom. My analysis indicates that the ship encountered a rogue wave. The trough preceding the wave was so deep that the liner simply capsized and sank vertically, dragging all its wreckage into the resulting vortex. Another incident occurred with the Norwegian tanker Berga Istra in December 1975. It was one of the largest vessels in the world. It vanished in the Cold Triangle so abruptly that its owners only learned about it a week later, when the ship failed to make contact at the designated point. 2 surviving sailors were rescued after 20 days on a raft. They spoke of 3 consecutive explosions that tore the steel giant to pieces. However, a physical examination later revealed that these were not fuel explosions, but the sound of metal rupturing under the force of waves whose energy exceeded all calculated loads. The ocean literally devoured the steel fortress. The Needle Triangle is a testing ground where nature demonstrates the insignificance of our engineering achievements. We build ships from high-strength steel, equipped them with computers, yet, against a 30-meter wall of water born from the collision of two oceans, we remain as defenseless as the Phoenician sailors on their wooden vessels. The oxidized copper of instruments, doors of cabins torn from their hinges, drifting in the depths, and the eternal roar of the wind transforming into an infrasonic moan. This is the reality of these coordinates. The ocean here is not merely a medium. It is an active adversary, wielding physics as a weapon. In this place, we realize that our knowledge of water is but a thin film on the surface of a deep, dark, and merciless planetary intelligence. We leave behind the dangerous currents of Africa and set a course northeast toward Southeast Asia. Ahead lies one of the most bustling, yet most enigmatic locations, the Taiwan Triangle, or the Formosa Triangle. There, where the world's most vital trade routes pass, ships continue to vanish under clear skies, and radars detect objects that move faster than any existing aircraft. We will immerse ourselves in an atmosphere of eastern mist and digital glitches to uncover the truth in waters where ancient legends meet future technologies. We leave behind the turbulent waters of Cape Agulhas and steer northeast into the very core of Southeast Asia. Our vessel enters a zone where the density of maritime traffic ranks among the highest on the planet, yet where the disappearance statistics cause even seasoned Lloyd's underwriters to shudder. We are moving into the waters of the Taiwan Triangle, also referred to as the Formosa Triangle. Triangle number 7, the Taiwan Rift, the Phantom Corridor, Formosa. The Taiwan Triangle lies in the western Pacific Ocean. Its apexes link the southernmost point of Taiwan Island, the shoreline of China's Fujian province, and the northern section of the Philippine archipelago, cutting across the restless Luzon Strait. This is a region where marginal seas converge with the open abyss of the ocean. Geologically, the area constitutes an extraordinarily intricate tectonic mosaic. Here runs the boundary between the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate. Beneath our vessel's keel lies the Manila Trench, plunging to depths exceeding 5,000 meters. The Kuroshio Current, the Black Stream, carries its dark, warm waters northward at speeds of up to 4 knots. The air here is always heavy, saturated with moisture and the scent of decaying seaweed, while the horizon is often veiled in a whitish haze, within which the lights of oncoming vessels vanish without a trace. The Taiwan Triangle is a realm of invisible internal waves. This is a unique physical phenomenon characteristic of the Formosa Strait. Due to the specific topography of the seabed and the difference in density between water layers, tides generate gigantic underwater waves. Their height can reach 170 meters, yet they are almost invisible on the surface. Only a slight ripple betrays their presence. For a submarine or a deep draft vessel, such an internal wave becomes a deadly trap. It creates a powerful downward current that literally sucks the ship into the depths. The crew feels as if the vessel suddenly becomes heavier. The instruments indicate a sharp increase in pressure, while the engines begin functioning under severe strain, struggling to push the hull toward the surface. Yet the ocean holds its prey in an unyielding grip. The magnetic field in this area is also unstable. Tectonic faults generate powerful piezoelectric charges within the Earth's crust. During moments of minor earthquakes, St. Elmo's fire or colossal ball lightning may appear above the water. At such times, radars go blind, displaying solid white noise on their screens, while the needles of analog instruments begin to spin, as if counting down the minutes until the end of the world. We have recorded spontaneous infrasound emissions here, with a frequency of around 7 Hz, causing sailors to experience fits of unexplained rage or, conversely, complete paralysis of will. In January of 1981, a large cargo vessel named Lingay disappeared in this area. It was transporting steel products from Kaohsiung to Manila. The weather was moderately stormy, typical for this region. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the captain reported that the vessel had entered a band of strange glowing fog, which completely blocked the operation of the radar and shortwave radio. No further messages were received. Search operations lasting 2 weeks found no trace of the 140-meter-long ship. 3 months later, one of Lingay's life rafts was discovered, washed ashore on the island of Luzon. The raft was completely empty, but its rubber covering was covered with strange, even cuts, as if someone had tried to open it with a scalpel. Another case concerns the disappearance of a naval patrol aircraft in the 1990s. The pilot managed to transmit, "We see an object on the water. It is enormous. No, it is not a ship. It... At that point, the transmission broke off. Researchers analyzing the recording discovered a strange hum in the background of the pilot's voice, the frequency of which did not correspond to the operation of aircraft engines. Later, in that area, fishermen discovered fragments that appeared to have been subjected to ultra-high temperatures in a vacuum. The paint on the metal had evaporated, and the edges of the debris were melted, even though there were no signs of a fuel explosion. I personally descended in that region using a remotely operated vehicle. On the slopes of the Manila Trench, we saw the skeletal remains of old junks, lying alongside modern container ships. They rest there, covered with a thin layer of silt, and the oxidized copper of their instruments glimmers faintly in the glare of the searchlights. A profound silence reigns in those depths, broken only by the muffled rumbles of tectonic shifts, reminiscent of the heartbeat of the abyss itself. The Taiwan Triangle reminds us that modern civilization, with its satellites and fiber optic cables, is merely a thin film on the surface of an ancient and formidable force. In this ghostly corridor, technology becomes useless when the inner forces of the planet come into play. Here we observe how space and time can become distorted under the influence of colossal energies concealed within the fractures of the Earth's crust. Sailors crossing this zone try to avoid looking at their instruments, relying instead on intuition and prayer. For when the echo sounder begins to show a seabed where none should exist, and the sky above the masts turns violet, you realize you are no longer in our world. We leave Taiwan behind us and head southeast, toward Australia. Ahead lies a region known as the Great Australian Bight, or the Bass Strait Triangle. There, in the strait between Australia and Tasmania, aircraft vanish directly from air traffic controllers' screens, while pilots, moments before their deaths, manage to report encounters with objects that defy the laws of aerodynamics. It is there, where the cold waters of Antarctica crash against ancient rocks, that we shall continue our chronicles of the devouring depths. We leave behind the tropical storms of the Taiwan Strait and embark on a long journey southward, crossing the equator while leaving the Indonesian archipelagos to port. Here, between the southern coast of Australia and the island of Tasmania, lies Bass Strait, a place where shallow waters meet the fury of the roaring Forties. This is the Bass Triangle, a zone where sky and water merge into a single gray shroud. Triangle number 8. The Bass Strait, the mill of the Southern Ocean. Bass Strait is a narrow corridor, roughly 500 kilometers long and 250 wide, separating the state of Victoria from Tasmania. The coordinates of this area cover the space between King Island to the west and the Furneaux Island group to the east. At first glance, this place should not inspire the same terror as the abysses of the Mariana Trench. The average depth here ranges from only 50 to 70 meters, yet it is precisely in this shallowness that the treachery lies. Bass Strait is a giant bottleneck. Massive volumes of water from the Indian Ocean and the Tasman Sea collide in this region, generating highly intricate current systems. When strong westerly winds strike the shallow continental shelf, the waves become abnormally short, steep, and chaotic. The ocean here smells of cold iron and salt, while the shores are littered with granite rocks that have ground ship hulls to splinters for centuries. The Bass Triangle is primarily a zone of electromagnetic chaos and atmospheric lenses. Research indicates that beneath the strait's seabed lie thick layers of magnetic ores and gas deposits. During abrupt changes in atmospheric pressure above the strait, local magnetic vortices appear. For pilots and sailors, this means an instant failure of navigation equipment. Here, a compass needle can complete a full rotation in a few seconds, while digital display systems start transmitting meaningless noise. The oxidized copper of old instruments aboard our vessel is becoming covered with a strange coating at these coordinates, as if reacting to an invisible static electricity suspended in the air. Another phenomenon is the crystal fog. Due to the temperature difference between cold Antarctic currents and warmer coastal waters, layered mirages form. They can lift the horizon or create the illusion of land where none exists. A pilot, seeing the lights of an imaginary city or a strip of shoreline ahead, may steer the aircraft straight into the water, convinced that he is landing on an airstrip. Infrasound vibrations generated by wind friction against the jagged cliffs of King and Flinders Islands reach dangerous frequencies, causing auditory hallucinations among crews. Scraping metal, voices, or a hum resembling the operation of a giant machine underwater. The 21st of October, 1978. This day is forever engraved in the archives of maritime disasters as the day of Frederick Valentich's disappearance. A young pilot in a light aircraft, a Cessna 182, was making a flight from Melbourne to Kemp Island. The weather was clear and visibility was perfect. At 19:06, Valentich contacted the air traffic controller. His voice, captured on tape, sounds anxious. He reported a strange object pursuing him at an altitude of approximately 1,300 meters. "It is not an aircraft," he repeated several times. He described the object as long, metallic, with 4 bright lights and a peculiar green glow. What happened next defies rational explanation. Valentich stated that his engine began to idle roughly and sputter while the object hovered directly above him. The final 17 seconds of the recording are not the pilot's words. They consist of a strange, piercing noise that experts later characterized as the screech of metal. And the metal, the aircraft, and the pilot vanished. Not a single piece of debris, not one spot of fuel was found in the shallow strait, where the seabed is almost entirely visible. My examination of this recording suggests that the grinding noise may have been the sound of fuselage deformation under the influence of a powerful directed magnetic field, literally tearing apart the molecular bonds of. Another tragedy occurred during the Second World War. In 1944, several Avro-Anson aircraft of the Royal Australian Air Force vanished while conducting training flights over the strait. In one instance, 2 planes flying wingtip to wingtip simply entered a cloud and never emerged from it. Search boats arriving at the scene 40 minutes later found the water surface completely empty. The ocean at that spot was only 45 meters deep, but even after a decade, divers could not locate a single engine or wing fragment. The earth in the Bass Strait Triangle seemed to have opened up and swallowed the remaining machines, leaving not even a shadow on the seabed. The Bass Strait Triangle is a place where, you see, depth is not always measured in meters. One can perish 40 meters from the bottom, just as without a trace as at 10 kilometers. The ocean here acts as a colossal crusher, where the laws of physics and anomalous energies collide. When you stand on the bridge and the steel-gray sky of Bass Strait presses down on your shoulders, you sense the delicacy of human life. We have shielded ourselves with radars and radio stations, yet against the crystalline fog and magnetic whirlpool, we are nothing more than melodies. The corroded copper of the instruments inside the cabins of sunken ships, resting beneath a layer of sand, stands as the sole testimony to how a split-second reality can morph into a nightmare. There is no room for mysticism here, only the grim, unyielding physics of an order we do not comprehend. We depart from the shores of Australia and undertake a transoceanic journey northward, crossing the entirety of the Pacific Ocean to return to the coasts of America. But this time, we will not venture into the open sea. Ahead of us lies an anomaly that fuses water and land into an unbreakable knot of death. Our route leads to the forests and lakes of Vermont, to a location known as the Bennington. In that place, people vanish, not from airplane cockpits, but directly from forest paths, leaving behind only a ringing silence and the scent of ozone. We explore how the laws of death triangles operate on solid ground, and what abysses lie hidden beneath the roots of ancient trees. We leave the cold waters of Bass Strait and execute a maneuver that at first seems unexpected. There exist terrestrial oceans, vast expanses of woodlands where the density of vegetation and the tangled terrain create an effect identical to deep-sea isolation. We enter the Bennington Triangle, a location where mountains breathe and people disappear as completely as in the depths of the Sargasso Sea. Triangle number 9. The Bennington Shadow, the Green Abyss. The Bennington Triangle is a term proposed by folklorists, yet it rests upon a frightening physical foundation. The zone is centered around Glastonbury Mountain and includes once thriving but now abandoned settlements such as Somerset and Fireville. The coordinates of this region span the southwestern part of Vermont. The terrain here is a jumble of rocky ridges covered with centuries-old forests that the locals refer to as the Green Sea. The air smells of decaying pine needles, damp stone, and ozone. Deep fissures and abandoned mines from the 19th century create a labyrinth beneath the Earth's surface, rivaling coral reefs in complexity. The weather here is as changeable as that of the open ocean. Dense, milky white fogs can engulf the slopes within a few minutes, erasing landmarks and deadening sound. Why do people vanish in these woods with the same regularity as ships in the Bermuda Triangle? My analysis as a disaster expert highlights several factors. First, geology. Glastonbury Mountain is composed of rock rich in quartz and magnetite. Under tectonic stress, the quartz generates piezoelectric charge. This generates local electromagnetic disturbances capable of disabling electronic compasses and causing malfunctions in portable radios. A person relying on technology in these forests becomes as helpless as a pilot caught in Alaska's magnetic vortex. Secondly, acoustics. The specific shape of Bennington's canyons and valleys, under certain wind directions, turns the region into a giant infrasound generator. Low-frequency vibrations, reflecting off the rocks, create standing waves. Infrasound affects the vestibular system and the psyche, causing panic, nausea, and auditory hallucinations. Sailors call this the call of the abyss, when a person feels that salvation lies in the darkest part of the forest or at the bottom of a deep ravine. Thirdly, the phenomenon of horizontal deprivation. In thick fog among uniform trees, the human brain loses its ability to adequately judge distances and directions. This is a terrestrial equivalent of a whiteout in the ocean. The oxidized MID of abandoned mechanisms in old mines and rusty signs along the trails only heighten the sense of desolation and entropy, where nature steadily reclaims the remnants of civilization. The chronicle of vanishings in Bennington begins on the 12th of November, 1945. A 74-year-old man named Mitty Rivers, a seasoned hunter and guide who knew every inch of those woods, was leading a group of 4 individuals near the hollow area. On the return journey, he fell slightly behind the rest and disappeared. A search operation involving hundreds of volunteers and military personnel yielded no results. The only clue was a rifle cartridge found in a stream. How could a man with such experience dissolve into a forest he considered his own home? This stands as a classic example of instantaneous disappearance, a hallmark of anomalous zones. On the 1st of December, 1949, an incident occurred that I categorize as a spatial. James Tetford, a war veteran, was riding a bus toward Bennington. According to other passengers, he was seated in his spot as the bus traveled into a wooded area. Yet, he never reached the destination. His belongings stayed on the overhead rack. An open schedule guide was lying on the seat, but the man himself was absent. The bus had no stops along the way. This vanishing from a confined moving space is a direct parallel to the disappearance of Captain Donner in the Michigan Triangle. On October 12, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson went missing. His mother had left him in the truck for just a few minutes. When she returned, the boy was no longer there. Hundreds of people combed the forest. Dogs and trackers followed a trail that ended in the middle of a highway, as if the child had been lifted into the air. The most grim incident involved Friday Lan in October of that same year. She vanished after stepping only 100 meters from camp to change her soaked clothes. Her body was found 7 months later in an open area that had been searched dozens of times before. The body was in a peculiar state of preservation that did not match the season or environmental conditions. This suggests that the entity, in this case a person, was removed from our reality and returned only after biological processes had been halted by an external anomalous influence. The Bennington Triangle teaches us that an engulfing depth is not necessarily 1,000 tons of water overhead. It is a state of isolation into which the elements immerse us. A forest can be just as alien and hostile as an ocean trench. Here we encounter what I call biological noise, the sensation that the mountain itself is watching you. The oxidized copper of instruments abandoned in the woods, the wind whistling through the canopy like a scream, and empty trails leading nowhere. These are the backdrops of our helplessness. We try to measure the world in steps and miles, but in such zones, these measurements lose their meaning. The horizon is flat and treacherous, waiting for us to make a single misstep in the fog so it can snap shut its green jaws behind us. We leave behind the ghostly forests of Vermont and return to our primary element. The final chord of our expedition awaits, a place that embodies all the horrors we have studied so far. Our course leads into the Sargasso Sea, to the very heart of the Bermuda Triangle. But this time, we will delve deeper into the legends of the Sea of Lost Ships. There, where currents form an eternal whirlpool and seaweed conceals the decks of vessels from every era, we will draw the conclusion of our investigation. Prepare to encounter the oldest mystery of the ocean. We complete our grand voyage by closing the circle where the legend of the Death Triangles took on flesh and blood. Our research vessel slowly enters the quiet, stagnant waters of the central Atlantic. There are no shores here, but there are boundaries drawn by four powerful currents: the Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic Current, the Canary Current, and the North Equatorial Current. We are at the very heart of the Sargasso Sea, in the epicenter of the Bermuda Triangle. This marks the conclusion of our expedition, a descent into the very core of an oceanic nightmare. Triangle number 10, the Sargasso Heart, the Sea of Lost Ships. The Sargasso Sea is a unique hydrographic phenomenon. It lies between 25 and 35 degrees north latitude and the 45th and 75th degrees west longitude. This vast expanse of stagnant water has its surface blanketed by brown algae known as sargassum. Here, the ocean appears motionless, heavy, and viscous, as if poured into a colossal bowl that the Creator forgot. Beneath this deceptively calm surface, abysses lurk. The North American basin plunges to a depth of 7,000 meters. Surface water temperatures reach 28 degrees Celsius, creating ideal conditions for evaporation and the formation of strange, localized fogs. Wind is nearly absent, with a dead calm prevailing, while the odor of iodine and decaying seaweed is so potent that it permeates clothing and ship plating within mere hours. The Sargasso Heart of the Triangle is a location where physics enters a domain of borderline states. The primary anomaly of this area, confirmed by numerous accounts from pilots and sailors, is the phenomenon of electronic fog. As an expert, I have examined telemetry data and survivor narratives. This is an unusual meteorological suspension, a dense gray cloud with a high concentration of static electricity. Upon entering such fog, navigation systems, ranging from old gyro compasses to modern quantum sensors, begin to generate erratic signals. The compass needle traces wild circles, as though it were seeking a pole that has relocated to the Earth's core. The physical nature of this fog is tied to electromagnetic energy emissions from deep fractures in the ocean floor. During periods of solar activity, these emissions ionize the layer of air near the surface. Consequently, a spatial lens effect is produced. Radar displays a coastline where none exists, or a clear horizon when a wall of fog looms directly before the vessel's bow. Moreover, the Sargasso Sea functions as a giant natural capacitor. The slow clockwise rotation of water masses generates a faint yet constant electrical potential. Combined with methane emissions from seafloor sediments, as discussed in the first chapter, this forms a deadly trap. Water loses its density, electronics go blind, and the crew descends into a state of sensory deprivation. Under such conditions, oxidized copper on instruments becomes covered with peculiar patterns, electric blooms, pointing to immense atmospheric tension. January 1921. The five-masted schooner Deering was discovered aground off Cape Hatteras, at the boundary of the Sargasso Sea. When rescuers boarded her, they were greeted by an icy silence. The vessel was in flawless condition. The sails were hoisted, meals had been prepared in the galley, plates were set on the tables, yet not a single living soul remained on board. Everyone had vanished: the 11 crew members, the navigation instruments, and the ship's log. The only living creature aboard was a cat. There was no evidence of a struggle or a hasty escape. The people had simply stood up and walked into the ocean. My analysis of this case points to infrasonic resonance. A low-frequency hum, generated by the specific movement of water in the Sargasso Sea, triggered an episode of uncontrollable madness among the sailors. They leapt overboard, seeking to end the unbearable vibration within their own bodies. Another tragedy, which has become a classic, is the story of the Mary Celeste. Although it was discovered further east, its route passed through these very waters. A drifting vessel, intact cargo, untouched personal belongings, and absolute emptiness. The ocean in this place does not take ships. It takes their life, leaving empty steel and wooden shells to drift in an eternal fog. Modernity is no less cruel. In October 2015, the vessel El Farah, a massive container ship 225 meters in length entered the zone of a hurricane within this triangle. Despite its powerful engines and satellite communication, the ship simply vanished. The captain's last message was brief. "We have a 15-degree list. We are losing speed." The depth at the site of the wreck was over 4,500 meters. When search robots found the hull on the seafloor, it looked as if it had been crushed by a giant hand. Decks were pressed inward, and steel was torn apart at This was the work of deep-water pressure and cavitation explosions that occur when enormous objects sink rapidly. Our journey through 10 triangles of death is now complete. We traversed ice, volcanic flames, magnetic storms, and the green abysses of forests. What have we learned? The world ocean is not merely water. It is a colossal, alien system with its own will and laws, ones we are only beginning to decipher. Every triangle is a scar upon the planet's body, a place where the thin membrane of our reality tears open, revealing the true nature of the elements. Humanity, with all its technology, remains but a grain of sand within this gray-steel chaos. We record echo sounder readings, analyze the chemical composition of water, yet in the moment of truth, when the radio spectrum is clogged with interference and the compass needle freezes, we stand alone with our primordial fear of the abyss. The ocean is the great equalizer. It holds within its depths ancient triremes and modern submarines, those of great navigators and ordinary sailors alike. For it, time does not exist. Only pressure, cold, and eternal oblivion remain. We are the archivists of lost ships, and our duty is to remember. To remember that 3/4 of the planet do not belong to us. We are merely guests, allowed a brief glimpse beyond the horizon while the ocean remains in a merciful mood. The engines of Kronos fall silent. We drift into a holding pattern at the edge of the Sargasso Sea. The observation log is closed. 10 chapters, 10 portals into the unknown, 100,000 characters of pain, searching, and scientific curiosity. The deck smells of ozone and salt. Condensation trickles down the porthole glass, hiding the true face of the Atlantic. We are returning to Porte, but a part of our soul will forever remain there, at a depth of 8,000 meters, where the oxidized copper of the instruments guards the secrets of those who never came back. The expedition is over, but the ocean is only just beginning its next breath. Yeah.